If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, hello everyone. Welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and today we're taking another mass line review. Today we're taking another review set of my Godzilla vs. Kong from 2021 figures from Playmates. Now, I need to stress again, much like the last few reviews, is that this is not the entire collection. This is my own personal collection, the ones that I have. I don't have things like the giant MechaGodzilla. I don't have the Hong Kong battle variants, and I didn't really bother to pick up like the various battle sets of like Godzilla vs. Kong and things like the Antarctic Kong and the Godzilla Supercharged or Extreme, as he was originally called on the back of the box of one of the figures. But I did get all of these ones, which are like kind of like the more common ones, because let's be honest, distribution was kind of a pain for me for a little while, especially because like for a little bit, none of my shelves or my local Walmarts were actually picking these things up for some reason. I guess Playmates just didn't stock them correctly or didn't make as much of them, which is weird because they're supposed to be a mass production company, but whatever. These are the ones I managed to snag over the years, past 3 years as a matter of fact. And we're going to be primarily looking at these ones. So with that being said, yeah, just, I guess, sit back and relax and let's talk about some Godzilla vs. Kong toys. So for starters, we're going to take a look at the Godzilla with Heat Ray. The pretty much the standard 6-inch variety. And as you can see, he's definitely stood, I wouldn't really say stood the test of time, but he's definitely at least up there as far as like the Playmates quality is concerned. And funny enough, I actually have two of them with me. If you're wondering why I have two of them, it's because I bought this one originally. Well, actually, my mom bought that originally, and I bought this one off a secondhand site from a lot. So, as you can see, they're definitely, well, quality-wise, I actually kind of prefer this one over this one, just because like the application is a bit better on this one. But maybe this one's just a later release, so let's talk about this one. So, for the overall mold, it's a very simplified mold. Like, for Playmates' first crack at a MonsterVerse Godzilla, they could have done way worse. The head is actually molded pretty decently well, having a much more softer plastic compared to the much more harder build of the plastic that's used throughout the body. And even though the eye placements definitely like this time around were definitely very crappy. Like, look at this. This one's all the way up. This one's all the way down. And then we bring in this one, which has more roughly consistent eyes. That one's a little bit low. That one's a little bit high. We can at least tell that this is way better than this. Oh, man. I even saw some that were like back here, then up there, then up like all the way here. Yeah, the inconsistency of Playmates was kind of like something that's pretty jarring, but whatever. The details are still mainly like confined to this. When you get to like the nostril, which mold wise barely exists, I'm making out like one slit of a line right here, like at the tip of my finger. Can't really see that, but it's not the seam line, it's like right below the seam line. Another thing I also would like to point out is the teeth. They're just basic white strips, which, hey, does the job. I've had white strips on my figures before. And it also has some nice paint on the tongue and the kind of like the mouth gum area. Freaking trying to get this thing to focus. But however, you can kind of see it's a bit scuffed, because we'll talk about it in like the heat ray section. But like when you peg it in, it actually kind of rubs in, and then you start taking it out and in and out and in. I'm gonna let the adult audience think about that for just a sec. You can just kind of see how it just kind of grinds up against the paint over time, and I guess I didn't really take it into account, so that's why I don't really put the beam inside this guy's mouth. But yeah, back to this one. What I do like, however, is that throughout the entirety of the figure, well, at least the majority of it, is that there's this subtle blue wash. For anyone that owns the NECA 1954 Godzilla, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's actually throughout the entire figure where it brings out some more of the details from the more shallow parts of the figure, like the more harder plastic regions, and even like the more detailed figures, part of the figures, like the arms, for example, definitely has a lot more that can find detail, and actually has some nice claw paint too, which is a bit more of like a darker, brown. It's because of like the color contrast with the darker color, it's not as noticeable to see on first glance, but you can definitely see it once you get to like things like the feet where mine's a bit scuffed, but this one's in relatively better shape. So I plan to keep it that way. And as you can kind of see, the like the molding here on the tail was never really the best. Like that was honestly my main complaint, was the fact that they like smoothened out the detail here where it gets to here, and also the pre-posed legs. Take it or leave it. I feel like this leg could have been done a little bit better because it's just kind of straightforward, while this one's a bit more rested. And then we kind of get to the dorsal plates, which are, well, we'll talk about the translucent plates in a bit, but the tail is fully sculpted and at an angle, so it's like straightforward, curves in, and then curls back in, almost like kind of like what they did with the old Bandai figures? Question mark? Yeah, like a little question mark. And something like Bandai's, that they sprayed this section of the tail, but neglected to paint the rest of it. Yeah. And the dorsal plates, oh, good grief, these things are beautiful. I sound sarcastic, but no, these things are actually really cool. I love the translucency on these things, and I can see why Playmates wanted to use these for a while with like different versions. Like they did it with this one, and then they did it with the was it like one of the Battle Box variants, and then they did it with the Battle Roar, as crappy as the figure that is, and then they did it with the Hong Kong Battle version. Like this is actually really cool, and even like the new Energized Godzilla, which I actually got to see in person a few days ago, but I didn't get it, but I plan to. But yeah, pretty much molded exactly like how it is in the film. Little mellow on the detail work, but it's alright. Very gummy plastic, bumping my camera, but it's still very flexible and very durable. No paint up here, sadly, but as far as like the sheer paint, it's actually got one more surprise, and you're gonna actually notice the theme with these, is that the original GVK figures had battle damage, like little scabs you could peel off, almost like a bloody wound. I mean, that's essentially what this is. And you can definitely see like the rib cages, which are all painted red. It's not like the best sculpting in the world, especially because like anatomically this doesn't make sense and it's not really accurate, because we do see Godzilla's bones when he gets kneed by MechaGodzilla pinned up against the building in the final climax. It doesn't really look like this, but whatever. A $10 figure's accuracy be damned. That's essentially it as far as like the sheer amount of sculpted paint. Now onto articulation. Jaw is on a hinge, so we can open about that far, close up about that far. Even though the commercial does show Godzilla's head turning, and you can kind of get a little twist and turn, do not turn the head. And I've said it time and time again, and I'll continue to say it. That seam line, see that? That's starting to split the line. Yeah, basically the head is plugged into the neck on a square peg, so you're just gonna get that whole thing right off. Shoulders, we can go pretty much, I don't want to say a full 360, but close to it. Like they're at a neutral stance to where they can kind of get to there. This leg can go up about that far, backwards about that far. The feet cannot rotate, much like the head can't, because again, you're just gonna split off the plastic and go on a big square peg. And this one can go up about, oh crud, just about bumping this guy over. Kick up about that far, kick backwards about that far, and no rotation here at the foot, but we do have a nice big meaty ball joint here at the tail, so we can go left about that far, right about that far, up about that far, down about that far, and can pretty much swivel and do all those things a ball joint can. And as for accessories, which you already saw it, we have a heat ray that plugs into the mouth, and it's actually borrowing the mold from the SH Monster Arts Godzilla 2014 Spitfire version. And how I know this is that I took a picture of both beams laying vertically, and I compared the kind of like the flame notches, and they're practically an exact match. Now, granted, the Monster Arts one is significantly longer, but there was some retooled with this one. So, yeah. It had to have been some form of like retooling with that one. So, as far as like the Heat Ray Godzilla, I would say that this is honestly definitely a winner, at least in my book. The next one we're going to take a look at is the Godzilla with Radio Tower. And essentially, it is the exact same base sculpt with different colors and a different accessory, but we're just going to get right into it. So, sculpt, essentially the same, although I will say you have a better time actually seeing it on this one than you do the darker one, because you can actually kind of see the detailing a bit more, like it's a bit more crisp. It has a bit more consistency when you actually look at it from the light. And I might be going nuts, but I'm kind of noticing that there's a bit of a dark spray on mine. I'm actually just now noticing that. I know these figures still continue to surprise me, but what's different about it is that the head, moving my camera up, actually has different paint. Well, specifically the eyes. For one, they're actually painted a little bit better as far as like the consistency of the eyes. Granted, one's still high, one's still low, but they're still fine. It's actually that they're orange this time around. Yeah, very interesting. I think on the promo images they were not orange; they were blue. Again, I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me. Because I never got the box for this thing. Because again, I bought it in a lot, but I will say again, like the overall like quality of the paint just looks a lot better when it's like light like this and not just jet dark. And also something I also really like is just the application on the teeth. It's just a lot better on this version than it is on the Heat Ray, at least my version. And the claw paint is also done really well, and you can just see it a lot better on this one than you can with the original Heat Ray, even though these things came out at the same time. So you get a little bit of a bit of a dark wash. It's very, very faded. You can kind of see on the scales. Like a little bit. You have to like really see it. There you go. You can kind of see at the tip of my finger. Little bit of a color difference. I might be going nuts. Oh no, there's definitely something there. Definitely a little, there you go, a little darker type color tone. And something that's also different is the dorsal plates are like a different blue. Instead of being translucent, they're actually solid and not translucent at all, but instead have like a blue spray, which is kind of interesting when you really think about it, because technically speaking, both of them would be being like the Heat Ray Godzillas in a way, just except this one's not spewing out the beam, this one's the radio tower, of course. And as you can also just see, like, again, it's just a much more lighter blue, grayish color. And mine does have a bit of a defect. Mine doesn't have like the blue spray on the bottom of the tail, but it's fine because it actually does kind of like color correspond a bit better. And something that's also a bit different, just also briefly just showing the claws, you can kind of see what I mean by it just looks a lot better. Something that also looks better in my opinion is the battle damage, like quality wise, like mine's got a bit of a red nick right there, but still it's fine. Like it just looks a lot more brighter and vibrant and almost looks more like blood. I don't know, I guess like the darker color aspect of the Heat Ray Godzilla just didn't really do itself any favorites. So when it came to like actually putting like the paint on that guy, it just didn't really do anything all that great, but it's still a decent figure. I kind of wish it had more of the dry brushing though. But for articulation, we have a hinged jaw, swivels at the shoulders, swivels at the feet, and a ball joint at the tail. So pretty much an exact one-for-one with the Heat Ray. Moving on to the accessories, we actually have the radio tower, which in order to put in Godzilla's hand, there's no like right or wrong way, so as long as it actually holds. But I just kind of like to clamp it around. Hold on, actually, there was a certain way I like to get it. It was right around here. I don't really put in the hand that much anymore, but come on, where is it? Where is it? Well, whatever. In some way, shape, or form, he can hold the radio tower, or you can just put it right beside him. One last shot. Yeah, that thing is not going to go in. But it's made of like a very flexible rubber, kind of like a bent up radio tower that never appears in the movie. Like two red stripes, banged up stuff. You can use it for your displays or whatnot. But there we go. That's Godzilla the Radio Tower. Next up, we have my personal least favorite of the bunch, the Battle Roar Godzilla. Now, you might be wondering, well, why do I hate this thing? Well, I feel like hate is a strong word, because if you're going to hate something, you probably should have like a very, very valid and specific reason as to why you hate that something. This is just a figure I don't like, because Well, alright, let's at least give this thing a fair shot, shall we? So, for the sculpt, follows the same kind of format, kind of like a softer plastic head with some pretty actually decent details, kind of using some more detailed looking teeth, I will give it that. But the freaking head is just so extended and it just looks so odd. I get it, he's looking up, but they literally just took Godzilla looking head and they stretched his neck like a giraffe. Like, this just looks awkward as heck. But the eye paint is actually okay. It's a bit better than what came before, but still not that great. Dry brushing on the head itself is actually pretty good. I do like that a lot. And we got some nice gum paint here with the teeth and spring-loaded jaw. Well, we'll get back to that. However, when we get a look at the figure downward, we're actually just gonna go like this. It's crap. Like, the paint work is absolute garbage. The blue wash on the shoulder is actually pretty good, but once we get to like the harder plastic, what the heck happened? Look at this. Like, it's all caked up on here, the button and on the sides, and it just looks so odd, almost like he's shedding his skin. You know what it actually looks like? A screen protector, but you peel it off and then you put it back on and then you see the little air bubble space. That's exactly what this looks like. It almost looks like I'm supposed to press it and it'll like bubble around Godzilla and I'm supposed to like press it until it's all gone. We all know that's not happening. But it just looks so caked on and it looks so last minute and it's just not done very well. I will say the blue wash on the legs are done pretty well, but even like the legs positioning just doesn't look, it looks odd. Like, again, we have like a neutral stance himself, but it's kind of like bent in. And then we have this one, which is like bent in even further, but like tiptoeing. So, like, what exactly is Godzilla trying to do here? Because you have him like kind of slouching and looking straight up like a giraffe. And then you have his tail, which is like swooping in, which I'll say the mold on the tail is done actually pretty decently. And I like the blue paint we have, although it is a bit brighter than the battle roar, the Godzilla with Heat Ray original variant. And much like that figure, it doesn't paint itself all the way. And I will say, I just like the pose on this one very much. But once we get to the dorsal plates, you didn't have thought there was a clear difference between the Heat Ray one. This is like night and day. Like, I don't understand how this like even looks remotely close, aside from the fact that they're both blue. Like, and as well, the dorsal plates just kind of suck because they're so, how do I properly put this? They're very shallow as like far as like the actual sculpt is concerned. Because let me bring back the Heat Ray Godzilla. See how sharp and accurate that looks? This looks more like the early Showa, not 54 Showa, like maybe 64 Showa. And that's not necessarily the right suit design for this Godzilla. And it just looks like these almost look unfinished or broken pieces of glass. Like, that's just, it's not very good looking. But what I do have to commend it for is the sound effect, which I don't know. It's like late at night when I'm recording this, so. Whoa. That's never happened. Like the rat rat rat. The heck? Okay. Apparently this thing is bugged. Sometimes I'll press it. I pressed it once. It does 2 roars. And then other times I do one, I press it and then it doesn't do anything at all. Yeah, it's just, it sucks. Also, front on shot sucks. Screw holes, take it or leave it. I don't mind them. Speaker holes, whatever. Yeah, it's just, this figure is just not done well. Also, as far as like sheer scale goes, it's literally just a mildly sized up version of the Heat Ray Godzilla. Look at this. They literally took this, stretched it out, and then bulked up the tail. Like, look at how much more bulky of a tail he has compared to his predecessor. Yeah, look, I'm trying to judge this thing on fair ground here, but the ground right now is crumbling because this figure, honestly, kind of sucks. its only real redeemable qualities, in my opinion, are the feature when it actually works, and its articulation, which is shoulder swivels, jaw does not move even though it is spring-loaded, feet swivels, sorry, hip swivels, feet swivels, there we go, and a ball-jointed tail, which you can pretty much move in any way which way you please. But aside from that, this is exactly why I didn't buy the rest of Battle Roars. I'm sorry. Even if the new GXK ones are good, this one just kind of killed any momentum I had, and that Kong looks derpy as heck. The only real one that looks good out of the line is probably the MechaGodzilla, because even the new Kong they have just kind of looks a little derpy, and the vaults from what I hear is just equal in consistency. Don't get me started on Scar King's big bug eyes. So whatever. The battle roars are neat in concept, not so much in execution. So for the next figure we're going to be taking a look at today is the Kong with Battle Axe, and much like the Godzilla with HEAV, right? I've got two of them on the shelf with me because, again, bought them from a lot, so we do have a bit of quality consistency. Well, first we're going to actually just talk about the accessory just to really get the differences out of the way. The axe itself is made of a pretty good blue wash. Like, I do like it. I will say the brown definitely kind of looks off-putting in some areas, but overall, my original one, this is the one I got originally. The axe on him actually does look pretty nice. While this axe has, in my opinion, just a wee bit too much brown on it, especially on this side. Like, that just looks almost like it's rotting away. But it does look the part. And aside from that, it's basically one-to-one, so... And I mean, the axe itself, long, nice. You get what you want. Not too much coloring on the actual handle itself. Maybe would have like a bit of a blue spray kind of on the scale part of it. But ignoring the axe for a sec, we have some nice kind of sculpt work on the face, especially for a $10 toy. The eye paint is actually done. It's alright. This one is looking down. This one's kind of more standard, so it does kind of get a little googly. This one, they're about equal. This one looks kind of more correct. This one's looking more off to the side. And again, the entire face is kind of like sprayed on black. Not too much in as far as like paint variety, but we do have some nicely painted teeth with nicely painted and sculpted in tongue. And some mild details in there. We have some mildly sprayed, or actually pretty well painted pecs, and you can actually turn the body, and yeah, it's actually going to be painted underneath, which is why the other exclusives can't do that, but this one could. I have no idea. But we do have some nice painted scars. Kind of would have preferred if it was sculpted as opposed to just being painted, but that's okay. And we do actually have like a mild black wash on the front of the body. It's not on the back, but you can kind of see like where the fur is here, and some like mainly towards like the wrist. It does look the part, and even we have some like pure black feet and fists, which are also a nice touch. Mainly on like the skin portions where there's fur, it's actually fur. Where there's skin, it's more like a black color. But we do get to the back, and we do get like some less of the detail here. And honestly, yeah, it does have a bit of gloss in some seam lines, which are kind of ugly, but again, for what Playmates' first attempt at a Kong figure, and I think this was like, what, 20 or so years? No, actually, I think it was like 15 years. Because it was released in 2020, and those 2005 came out in, well, 2005, so makes sense, but I think that this guy actually did turn out pretty well. Before articulation, we have a swivel here at the head. Swivel hinges at the shoulders, so you can kind of go up and down like that. Up about that far, down about that far, rotate. This elbow can go bend in, kind of straighten out a little bit more than it should, but we do have a nice freed up swivel. And we do have a nice freed up swivel here at the wrist, which can go 360. Legs can go kick up about that far, backwards about, it's actually, okay, let's redo that. We can go upwards about that far, backwards about that far. No idea if it's focusing or not. And we can go pretty much all the way around, kick with the knee like that, go backwards with the knee like that, and nothing at the foot or waist. So, as far as articulation, he's definitely the most posable guy here. But that also kind of perfectly segues to the next figure we have, Kong with Fighter Jet, which, if you don't know, I got this guy used, so he doesn't actually come with the Fighter Jet, unfortunately. But I can tell this is the Fighter Jet Kong because He has the snaggletooth, and he has a bit of a lighter paint job, but he at least comes with this battle damage, which I completely forgot to mention, so let's bring you back. It's basically just a neat little scab. Get on the shoulder right there. And then you can kind of like put it back in, take it back out. You can pretty much do whatever you want with it. I don't know. And the same thing happens with the Kong fighter jet, so let's peel it off here. Oh wow, it's a lot harder, I forgot. I don't really play with these figures on a daily basis. Unless if I'm making a review or a T.O.S.G episode, there you go. So, however, I will say, like, as far as, like, the differences go between these two, it's a little bit more minute compared to, like, the Heat Ray versus Radio Tower Godzillas. But you can kind of see it has a bit of a lighter color scheme with, like, the gray as opposed to just the black, which I kind of prefer. I also kind of prefer the application on this guy's eyes. It just looks a bit better. And I do like the kind of more signature expression as opposed to just the more pissed off opening mouth. I feel like if this Kong actually had the colorization, sorry, if these two, which you can kind of see this one's a bit lighter, this one's a bit darker, if he had this guy's colorization and his head, well, he still kept this head, but just the colorization, he looked like picture perfect. But basically, everything is a bit of a lighter color here. We do have a bit of a dialed back black wash, and we do have the same amount of articulation, plus, I want to say different colored. They look like a different color. I'm trying to see if, like, the scarring is different. But yeah, essentially, the Kong fighter jet is the exact same figure, just with some different colorization to him. He has the exact same articulation, even though he has a new head sculpt, but that is essentially about it. Continuing on with the world of Kong and the Hollow Earth, not really, sort of really, is the Skullcrawler, which, if you don't know, this is number 10, as it is in the movie, which is ironic because guess who's in the movie? 11. Not so much. Millie Bobby Brown plays 11, Stranger Things, you guys know it. So, now technically speaking, 11 has officially meet 10. So, whatever. For the first, like, major Skullcrawler action figure, this guy's pretty great. The head sculpt is actually done pretty well. We have some nice kind of, like, concave area where you think the eye would be, and then we have, like, the actual eye. Tongue paint actually is looking more like a standard tongue as opposed to, like, the more slithery, snake-like tongue of Skullcrawler. Mine's got a bit of a nick. I can't remember exactly where that came from. Probably random into something when I was filming a T.O.S.G episode. And we do have a bit of a red spray that kind of goes across the top of the body, which is nice, plus some more red lining. Almost looks like blood, even though that's not really what it's supposed to be. I think they're just meant to be, like, cool red little streaks. Almost like some sort of camo, even though I really don't imagine anything that could be camouflaging the Skullcrawler, especially given how big he is in comparison to the other Skullcrawlers we've seen. We have some nice elbow spikes. Would hate to get hit by one of those, along with some gnarly little arms. Yes, these are considered arms. Just look at it. That's clearly an elbow. And we do have some nice detailing on the tail. But keep in mind there was no paint on this thing whatsoever, though the tail section itself, because the red paint does stop there, but the details do continue. And as far as, like, underneath the figure, we do get some nice, more rigid detail. Not so much bad things, but it still looks great. And as far as articulation is concerned, we have a jaw hinge, so you can open about that far, which is on par with Shimo's. Close up about that far. No head swivel, even though it looks like there's one and it moves mildly. Do not turn it. It will break the figure, much like Godzilla. Shoulders can go up about that far. Down about that far. Can rotate. And this elbow can bend outwards about that far. In about that far. Can rotate. And there's a ball joint here at the tail. But, of course, no GV case figure is complete without a piece of battle damage. And this one's honestly my least favorite because it looks the least organic, because you can obviously tell that this thing is, like, jagged. Of course, it's a Skullcrawler, so it's not going to have, like, the most organic look to it. But it's definitely got at least the job done as far as, like, all of the GVK figures, so at least it has battle damage. I would have kind of preferred it maybe be on, like, the top where it kind of like expose the bottom of the ribs, as it almost was in Kong Skull Island, but that's like a totally other thing. But for accessories, he comes with his own little HEAV, which is the Hollow Earth anti-gravity vehicle. No, it's anti-gravity vehicle. There we go. Yeah, I don't know why I had a brain fart there, but he doesn't really hold it, but you can kind of make him chomp on it. Right angle. Just trying to figure out how you actually get it to chomp. There we go. There's one of the ways. And he actually kind of holds on to it decently well until he doesn't. So, overall, for the Skullcrawler, not a bad figure. Definitely dialed back as far as like the potential goes, just because it is a Skullcrawler, and I definitely think it could have came with like a different accessory. Like, what if like they removed the tongue in here and added like a tongue extension accessory, almost like they did with the Godzilla beam, just jab it the side of his mouth and like let that thing flail. Just except it's not a beam, it's a tongue. So I think that honestly would have been a better accessory, as I said years ago. But this is at least still good because we got another HEAV. The next one we're going to be taking a look at is the MechaGodzilla, and or as I like to call him, eBay scalper up the butt 3000, because when this thing came out, I saw some pretty nasty prices on eBay. Like, the only reason I have this thing is because I got it in a lot, and that explains why I have the duplicates of the Godzilla with Heat Ray, Kong Battle Axe, and the Skullcrawler, yada yada yada. I kind of only bought the lot just for this guy, but hey, I got some other goodies. But with that being said, let's talk about this guy. The MechaGodzilla is easily my favorite of the Godzilla Kong line, or Godzilla versus Kong lineup. Because like as far as like the sculpt and paint, not so much paint, because we have two tiny pupils that are painted red, mixed in with some gun silver metallic color for the bottom jaw, and a bit of red splotches here, here, and here to kind of like give that core red energy appeal that MechaGodzilla has in the film. But that's kind of it as far as like the paint is concerned. Everything else is moving to HEAV. You already know what it comes with, but we'll talk about that later. That's kind of it as far as like the paint is concerned, because the entire base color is silver, and this entire back strip of spines, which we'll actually talk about because it's all just one, actually technically two pieces of elasticized kind of rubber, but it's all made of like the same kind of material. It's all very flexible. Got a little bit of rigidness on the middle row, but the outer rows are like pretty flexible. And we even have a bit of flexibility here, but they're all made of red rubber. But going on to the main body, we have a bunch of beautiful done detailing, especially for a $10 figure. Like, Playmates really jacked up the detailing to 11 here. Like, this is actually some really nice sculpt work for a $10 figure. We have some like sections that almost look like ribs. We have some of the paneling here, the unused cannons, like the stomach cannons, which is modeled and such. We have like the crane hands, which one's a bit more open than the other one. This one's kind of like more grabbing, and I'll save that for later. And they even get like different poses. The arms are basically done. They all look like rectangles, but still very accurate to the film. Has a nice like detailing, like the X pattern here and here. On the legs too, which we have two sections of it, as well as like a nice little kneecap with some more segmenting and panel lining. The very awkward looking feet, which I kind of would have preferred if it had, well, more of a fault of the movie, but like a more cluttered, well, kind of more chunky ankle, as opposed to it just looking more like a high heel. MechaGodzilla's penis. And obviously we have the very infamous tail segments. And yeah, a lot of the same kind of details, like as far as the ridges are concerned, and then all the way it goes down until where we can't really see like the ridges anymore, but we do get a nice drilled spike as well. And of course we get some more like segmenting here, like the little I can't remember if these were the missile launchers in the film. I think these were. And then we also have like the shoulders, the shoulder caps, and the leg caps, which are also pretty good as well. And for articulation, we have a hinge at the jaw, so we can open up pretty wide. Close that back up. We don't have anything at the head, because again, the spines will lock everything up into place. We have swivel hinge shoulders, so we can go up about that bar, down about that bar. Can rotate and go all the way around. For the waist, nothing. But for the legs, we actually have the best leg joints on a Godzilla Playmates figure ever. We can go upwards about that far, downwards about that far, and can rotate, go like in and out like that. So we go up, down, and we can bend at the knee like that. And we can swivel at the foot. And we can have a ball joint here at the tail, which is very nicely done. And for the battle damage, it's all across MechaGodzilla's chest. Kind of looks like a certain video game character. And has more like that kind of gun paint plastic look to it. So it's definitely going for, again, that more, at least this looks more natural. And kind of makes sense because he did get striked here in the movie when Kong's like finishing him off with the axe. He goes like boom to the tail and then several times to the arms and the chest. And then finally he ends it off all here and then rips off MechaGodzilla's head, which is pretty snazzy. And also let's just talk about the HEAV. As I mentioned before, it's a green HEAV as opposed to the Skullcrawler HEAV, which I'll grab just for comparison if I can find the freaking thing. You know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna show this here. Yep. So it has one panel of silver, and the rest is entirely green. Almost kind of reminds me of a board game piece like Monopoly, but you can actually make MechaGodzilla hold it like this. And there you go. Your HEAV is now ready to go, which is ironic because the HEAVs were never on screen with MechaGodzilla, technically, theoretically. And he actually pulled onto it pretty well. So if you want MechaGodzilla to like chuck and throw it, not so much throwing it, but you can kind of get him to chuck it. So standard MechaGodzilla, pretty good. And the last of the 6-inch figures we're going to take a look at today is... Oh wait, that's the Godzilla theme. I meant to do the MechaGodzilla theme. Is the Battle MechaGodzilla, which, as I like to call him, Fruit Punch Twizzler flavor, baby. Because Beam looks like Twizzler, Fruit Punch, whatever. So I'm not going to be going over sculpt and paint because it's the exact same. The only real difference is he does keep the red eyes here, which is nice, and you can actually still kind of tell that it's painted. It's a slightly different color. It's so minute. This one's a tad bit lighter, like so freaking close, even though essentially it's just the same. And it does get rid of like the red parts because this is like him powering up MechaGodzilla, like when he's facing off against Skullcrawler. Facing off, I act as if it's like the next big showdown in WWE history. And also, Gunmetal still makes a return. But essentially, he is just one big, broad color of dark gray. And the red parts are translucent, which, thank you, Playmates, for making some... Okay, stop in focusing. Thank you. It's entirely translucent. The red parts are, which, again, thank you, Playmates, for making something that corresponds really well with the previously released Heat Ray Godzilla. So now we got like a translucent Godzilla on MechaGodzilla. And yeah, he's essentially just the same as the MechaGodzilla with HEAV, just with no red, and no red paint applications on his chest, and translucency on the spines, and a dark color scheme, of course. The only real other difference is the fact that he comes with a heat ray, or a proton scream. It's literally just the heat ray sculpt, which if I may pull it out of Mr. Godzilla, you can definitely see it's the same beam. In fact, you can actually put this beam inside of his mouth. It looks rather seamless. And you can actually put this guy's beam inside of Godzilla's mouth, and boom, you have a Godzilla evolved before Godzilla evolved. But really, it's the exact same mold. It's not as translucent of a beam. It's still translucent, but it's a lot more opaque. I'm trying to think of an example here. It's almost like painted on... I know this is going to sound weird. It's like regular window, except versus tinted window. If that makes any form of actual sense. Probably does not, but I will say, like this MechaGodzilla's legs seem to be bit looser than the originals because every now and then, like the more I keep like fiddling with it, it has like a tendency to like topple over. I don't know if it's because of the beam. Well, let me try it out here. No, I don't think it's because of the beam. Maybe it is, but it's a fairly light piece. Maybe, but still. Also the beam itself, even if I clamp in the jaw, it's kind of a loose fit, and it does kind of fiddle inside the mouth a little bit, so it's not the perfect secure figure that it needs to be. But overall, at least like as far as another variant of MechaGodzilla, I definitely prefer this version to the original, as far as like the beam itself and just it being an overall, technically speaking, a cooler accessory than the HEAV. Then again, I am biased and I like my MechaGodzillas with a bit of firepower. But overall, still a very nice addition to the MechaGodzilla family. Next up, we're moving right to the Giants, and today we're gonna actually just start with Giant Kong. And you probably remember I took a look at this guy fairly recently with the three-way comparison of the Skull Island Kong, this guy, and the GXK Giant Kongs. But this guy I gave quite a bit of flack for because he just doesn't really have as much as he should necessarily to keep up with the others, and that's essentially still with this figure. In fact, he's probably, I really hate saying this, but my least favorite GXK figure, but it's our GVK. GXK, GVK. Those are two different things. Whatever. You'll see what I mean. But for the head, basic application, we have actually quite a nicely painted and detailed eye. Kind of got like some standard white eyeball, and then we have the orange iris and the black pupil. And we have some pretty well painted, kind of like strip of teeth that actually have some pretty well like nice dimension to it, because you can kind of look at it there. And then the tooth is like really engraved there, so it really has some dimension to it. And even has a bit of snaggle to it, like it's essentially just a sized up version of this, even though this came before. It just has the same head sculpt. But aside from that, that's actually, well, also then the scarring, which is also painted all right. It's got a bit of more of a kind of more, what's the color I'm looking for? Some sort of like, I don't know what to call this. But it's like a kind of bone yellow ish color. It's like very faded almost. If you were to take that color and kind of like kind of make it more faded, it's kind of what's going on here. But aside from that, that's literally all the paint. Yeah, he is essentially one jet black Kong. And even though, again, Playmates isn't really one for doing accurate figures, I have to at least commend them when they make a figure like this that has black on it, yes, but also has brown and actually has some of a gray wash to it, like a black wash. And why they were able to do it on a smaller 6-inch figure that came out the exact same time, part of the exact same wave as this, kind of makes you wonder why this happened. These two figures almost feel like entirely different companies, even though they're not. So that's honestly why I really am struggling to really like this thing as much as I should. I do like it. It's cool that I have a giant 2021 Kong, but the fact that I now have the GXK Kong, that kind of makes me like this one a little bit less. And even though the detail is actually pretty good, it's got some nice detailing, especially for like the fur going down to the shoulders and the wrists, where like it's mainly like the skin areas that are like more smoothened out. You can kind of see like the facial area where there is skin smoothened out, the pecs, the man boobs, whatever you will, and the feet, they're all smoothened out. And it looks alright. And it actually kind of gives like a different almost, I wouldn't really say it's an intentional color difference, but where it's smoothened, it looks like a, you're going to really be confused by what I say this, but like a darker black. Here's what I mean. It almost looks like this is black and the rest of it is charcoal, which isn't really correct because Godzilla should be charcoal, not Kong. But that's kind of what it looks like. And maybe there is a spray, because it's also kind of like the color there, I think it stops there. So maybe there is a black spray, but that doesn't really make sense to do it black on black. You know, I really feel like if this guy was more of like a lighter orange, like the promo pics depicted it as, it would have been a lot better, but unfortunately the figure just didn't deliver on what it was supposed to. And it especially doesn't help the fact that the articulation itself just it's basic, it's serviceable, but I really feel like again with the GXK stuff now rolling out from the same manufacturers, this thing really kind of gets outdated. So we have a swivel here at the head, so you can swivel pretty much all the way around. Swivels at the shoulders, which you can go full 360 with. We can have wrist swivels, which is alright. And we have some hip swivels, which we can go pretty much like a full 360 with each. Kind of go out to the side like that. And we have a swivel at the foot, which is also nice and spectacular like that. And yeah, that's basically it. He has an open up hand, even though he doesn't really come with anything to hold an axe. It's not gonna fit. It's like way too small. This thing that's like a toothpick for him. And honestly, yeah, the Kong Giant 2021 Kong is just kind of a. I really hate to say this because this was a gift. That's why I'm so hesitant to be negative about this guy. But really, my feelings for this guy have kind of like dwindled as far as the figure quality is concerned. Bland. Like, it's really just bland. So, really, it's definitely my least favorite of the GXK offerings. GVK. My stupid self. Man. However, what's not so much of a bland figure is the giant Godzilla. Now, this guy has pretty much all the things I like and more that I would have liked to see from Kong. Now, let's take a look at the nitty gritty of it all. The head, sizing up the camera here, the head has an orange eye and a black pupil, which is painted actually pretty good. It's straight ahead, not out to the side, which I do like. And it actually has some individually sculpted, they're like little tiny dots. So you can kind of rub your finger and feel something pointy. That's the teeth. And painted teeth. And actually has a painted tongue, which I do like. Essentially the same color as the Radio Tower Godzilla, just scaled up. Speaking of which, the molding itself, it's done actually pretty well. Like, it actually has some nice detailing going on to the sides. And even though that it does look a bit mellow at first, it's actually quite detailed as far as, like, again, what's essentially a $20 figure. And you also get, like, a black spray, which is actually pretty surprising. I don't know why they would do that all of a sudden, but they did. And it actually kind of, like, goes onto the sides. And you do get some nicely painted claws, which are painted, that brown on the original as well. The original is in 6-inch, even though they came out around the same time. The feet position are a lot better because both of them are kind of more neutral. Obviously, one's still going forward, the other one's still going back, but it still looks a lot more natural rather than just straight ahead. But we do have some nice claw paint here for the feet. Looks nice and secure. And of course, we get the majestic blue paint. Like, this is beautiful. I love this blue spray. Granted, it's a bit thick in some areas, but I just love the way this thing looks. It's just eye candy to just see this thing up on the shelf and just see all this like blue spray around it. And it, again, looks really nice. Also, however, mentioning and talking about the screw holes, yeah, Kong had the screw holes on the back. Godzilla has them here. Don't really care about screw holes because I grew up with toys that had screw holes, so I don't really care about these having screw holes. So I have a bit more tolerance than maybe the average Joe that would buy this thing. But still, they're there. They're not covered. If you don't like them, put some epoxy putty and find a matching paint to this gray. So then there you go. Mine does have a bit of a brown nick. I don't know if that was from the previous seller because I bought this thing off a secondhand site. And we also have a long, very cool tail. It's kind of in a more basic pose this go around, where it's like more drooping on the floor, but it actually has some mild curvature. So it starts out straight, but then curls in like that, and kind of curls out and then back straight. Very interesting. Almost like he's really just walking through the city, just minding his own business, just dragging his tail along. You know, maybe these figures are more than just plastic figures. Maybe they can tell you something. Not really. It's not like this thing has a speaker box anyway. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, he does not. But as for articulation, he has nothing at the head, no jaw articulation, but he does have swivels at the shoulders. So we can move a fair amount there. Swivels at the wrists. This leg can kick up about that far, backwards about that far, near closing my finger in. and can rotate side to side, not all the way around thanks to this and the build quality of the legs, which is my really only major complaint. And back here we can get articulation like that, and same thing there. And just to also go over this arm, up, down, and side to side. And one more joint right here, which is actually kind of loose on mine, but that's okay. And you just go round and round for days. Also, I should probably mention, this thing is sharp. Like, these are rubberized, so they're not going to be sharp. This is sharp. Like, you can literally disattach this thing, or maybe take it out of the box, take it, and bash someone upside the head with that. And you'd probably be charged for attempted assault or murder. But essentially, that is the giant Godzilla. And so overall, it's essentially everything I wanted with Kong and more. I would have liked to see some more dry brushing on Kong, maybe a lighter color scheme than the dry brushing. Take what they had with the 6-inch figure and carry it over to the 11-inch. But instead, we got like a very flat black paint job, while this actually has some color variety with the gray clashing with the blue and some black, along with some colored nails, plus some orange eyes. I know Kong had orange eyes, but that's really all the color he had to him. And 3 little tiny scars ain't gonna do you any favors. And so, that's basically my entire lineup of Godzilla versus Kong toys. I'm gonna be 100% honest. Reviewing these toys over the past day or so has been kind of not a surreal experience, but, and this is gonna be really odd, kind of nostalgic. Now, hold up. Aren't these figures only like 3 years old? Yes, they are. Well, actually, technically 4 because they were released in 2020, some of them were. And the movie didn't come out until 2021, so some of them are actually 3 years old. But I like to think of these figures as almost like a gateway back to when it was an odd time. Of course, like smack dab right in the middle of the pandemic. Pretty much the whole world was changed at that point. And this was like basically my collecting for a little while. Because NECA stopped their Godzilla line midway through 2020. So this was kind of it for a little while. I will say it was kind of like a mix between this and the classic line. But really, it's such a fascinating gateway to like go back and relook at these old figures that I once got in the pandemic. And I will say this, like, even just looking at the figures now, it's awesome to see just how much Playmates has grown from these to the GXK line, which in my opinion is done a lot better as far as like consistency is concerned. Kinda. I will say the Godzilla Evolved is as good as it is. The Kong with Beast Glove is just an overall executed better figure, but that's like a whole can of worms for another day. But as for these, yeah, I really dig them. I like the Godzillas they put out. I like the MechaGodzillas they put out. And I like the Kongs, plus the Warbat, the Skullcrawler, even though I don't own the Warbat. It's still fascinating and just awesome to see. Especially like the giants and, you know, just everything here. Do I plan to get the rest of the line? Honestly, no. With how rare some of them are, well, rarer by comparison, I should add, it's just kind of odd, honestly, because I think just as for convenience sake, I'm just going to stick with the GXK line because at least that's new, that's current. I know they're still continuing like the MonsterVerse line because the GVK line evolved into the MonsterVerse line. Then we got G14, King Ghidorah, Skull Island Kong, and then they're getting reissues of those guys. But this is really like, I feel like they should start reissuing like all of them. Like this was awesome. And I hope that we can return to something like this. I'm not saying like in the middle of a pandemic, but maybe like bring back the old GXK sets. Because a lot of them haven't been reissued yet. Like these guys, for example. Even though we have the more cheaper or more expensive by $5 giant ones from the New Empire, these are still fun to look at. And honestly, I think that literally, what am I really trying to say? It's just fun to reminisce and brings me back to when collecting Godzilla figures and Kong figures was more common than ever. Until eventually stockage just got cut, and eventually the classic line went. At least we got it back with the GXK line. But I think really all these figures are really great. Some of them are better than others. For example, this is probably my favorite of the bunch. That's my least. But really, it all comes down to personal preference. If you like your GXK figures with a ton of variety, this is definitely the line. It's got a lot of options, and resale value from what I'm looking at is like 20 bucks per figure, which is not bad because you're still getting a 6-inch figure with battle damage and an accessory for each. That's not a bad deal, especially given the fact that Monster Arts won't give us anything for like what, 100 plus bucks. Looking at you, Shimo. Yes, I know Shimo comes with the alternate Kong. Is it the Beast Glove? Or is it a head? I forget. I think it's the head, but whatever. But still. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you guys like this video, definitely leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, everyone.